Howdy, friends. Devin here with the Roman Baron, and I wanted to come to you today to do a video that does break my heart a little bit. And I want to do this as honestly and as non-detractionary as possible, because many of you don't know where I've been for maybe the past 2 years, maybe the past year, maybe the past 3 years, or maybe 6 months. And I wanted to kind of give you an idea of where I've been. So we'll start the story by saying this video is going to be, everything in this video is going to be of my opinion only. I don't want to get wrong information. I don't want to speak wrong information, but I will speak it truthfully and as to the best of my knowledge. About a year ago this month, the end of this month, I moved out to the small town of Pipe Creek, which is an unincorporated community in Bandera, Texas. And this place was called Sanctus Ranch. And this came after, some pretty shoddy employment that I had. I had a great opportunity and it fell through. And so after their graduations at Lumen Christi Academy, which was a school which they operated there, I inevitably ended up being interviewed for a position that Dan wanted to speak, Dan Savagny, the owner, Dan wanted to speak to me about. So a few days later, I decided to go and interview, and I liked it so much that I went back the next day and I started a position there called the Luminary Program, which sadly no longer exists, and fell through, I think, about July or August. I can't remember which month. Either way, though, it was beautiful. According to the contract that I signed, my workload was mostly going to be liturgical work. It was going to be also hospitality for the ranch and all the retreatants, and it was going to be sacred music, and it was going to incorporate all of that, but also some manual labor, which I've done before because I've been to, I was at a Benedictine monastery there in Oklahoma for a month. So, something like that was, yeah, no problem. Absolutely. And I really enjoyed my time there in the beginning. It was beautiful. It was out in the sticks and, it was really a place that I enjoyed, and having access, 24/7 access, to a chapel was also amazing. My prayer life thrived and I thrived and I felt very close to God. But soon thereafter, I noticed some hardships, but, I'm like, well, there's going to be hardships everywhere, so I'll just continue. Now, to back up a bit, this program was called the Luminary Program. As I said, it no longer exists. But the Luminary Program existed for people who were discerning a vocation, whether that was marriage or the priesthood or going off to college or whatever it might be. But it was mostly, uh, formed off of the Benedictine ethos and was really geared towards helping people discerning the religious life, like myself. And so there were some things that I agreed to in the beginning because it was of my opinion that Dan was a virtuous guy, just a businessman trying to do his best in a very, sleazy world. But so I basically signed a contract saying that I would obey Dan as an abbot of a monastery, that I would be like a monk and he would be an abbot. And in the contract, it specifically says obey like an abbot, like a monk would obey an abbot. And so, if, I'd have no problem with that, right? And obviously now I do, but, all that just to say, in retrospect now, it was such a hypocritical thing for him to say. Either way, though, my experience there was great, and it was a beautiful experience in the beginning, and it turned south pretty quick. The culture there, the ethos there was evil. Evil. It was pure evil. Again, this is just my opinion, right? But I lived with the Savagny family for 4 months, and I was just astonished. I mean, the verbal abuse, the constant fighting and yelling at each other, the lack of virtue, and that came back to me from Dan. I can only sing the praises of the other members of his family there, who are on the receiving end of Dan's whip, right? They were all broken by Dan, and so they were all very broken people just trying to make things work. Well, needless to say, I started, telling Dan, hey, look, I have type 1 diabetes. There's only so much work I can do in the South Texas heat before my health starts going haywire. So, I tried to work things out with him, and there was absolutely no compassion, absolutely no care in the world. He basically said, well, he just glazed over it and says, well, you need to work harder. And I'm like, Dan, I am here at the ranch doing work that I agreed to. I am not going to do work that I'm not going to agree to. I will do some extra work that I didn't agree to, but I can't just be your slave laborist. I'm here to chant masses, do manual labor, help out in the kitchen, all of these things as I have been doing, but it seems as if my work now is 90% manual labor and 10% everything else, which is the exact opposite of what I signed on to. But I continued to take the abuse. I continued to offer it up to Christ saying, hey, look, I'm not going to be here forever. So needless to say, other things happened where my personality, my, just really everything. I was being attacked by Dan, and subsequently my pay. It's of my opinion that my pay was cut, and it was cut. And I have the documentation to prove that I was expressly given a set stipend weekly, which only ended up being bi-monthly and a decreased payment. And I didn't have any expenses, so I continued to take the abuse. I'm like, Lord, I'm not going to be here forever, And I started discerning, okay, well, what else can I do to make money out here? And finally, it came to a point, I think it was late September, where I decided that after all of these things have transpired, that, it was time for me to leave the ranch. Because ultimately, I developed a romantic relationship with his daughter. And at that time, his daughter and I, we really did like each other. And there was no doubt about it. And we had come to the conclusion that I'm going to go ask Dan. Cause I was still friendly with him. I was still friends with him. I looked up to him. I'm like, I think he knows. Like, we sit next to each other all the time. Dan's a smart guy. He knew. But, when I went to go ask him, a Sunday after Mass, he was livid. You could see it in his face, and he didn't yell, but he was like, well, how does she feel about this? And I said, we're mutual in our feelings for each other. And so he said, well, let me go talk to her. And inevitably, what her daughter said was, not only was it the blessing not given, but they were like super upset. Probably the most upset you could ever be. To the point where his wife stopped talking to me, which was an integral part of my work at the ranch. You could clearly tell that everyone, including her siblings, were upset with me. All because Dan, again, he affects his wife and his children. And so for me, we kind of dated for maybe a month after that, 2 months, but we were walking on eggshells and we were constantly being spied on. And I'm like, look, can't do this. So I moved out of the ranch in late September, and I still retained my organist position there. And some canonical issues too, which I'm not going to get into, but it was really shifty, right? And I played my last Mass there December of 2025, the Sunday after Christmas. So all this being said, there's now a website, which I don't know who created, but it's kind of an expose on the shifty, the very shifty financial dealings of Dan. Audio recordings of him berating not only his donors, but calling some of the school students and other people there horrific names, just going to show you that, I thought that Dan might have just been conflicted and was a good person at heart, but was just kind of taken over by money. But it's of my opinion now that he is absolutely 100% without a doubt an evil person. And thanks be to God, the ranch is up for sale. Pelican Plus, according to multiple sources, has no money left. He's continuing to hire people and not pay them. And that's my opinion, but has been confirmed by several other opinions of people who worked for him. And, Kennedy Hall left, all of these other people left, and Pelican is going to go under if it's not bought out by, some other business. And so this is what happens to the ungodly when they use Christ, right? This is what happens to those who say, Lord, Lord. This is what happens when you say Christ is King and you don't mean it. And this should be a lesson for all of us. But I'm going to post that website underneath this video so y'all can go ahead and just check and look at all of this stuff for yourself and make your own decisions. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I believe this just needs to be said that it is of my opinion that Dan is a very horrible person. He knew that I loved his daughter. And that's like such a separate thing that's not even pertinent to why I'm saying he's a bad person. But he had some other guy who looks like me, some Yankee from Arizona, marry his daughter today. And not only that, but he, ruined the lives of his children. That's my opinion, but, his daughter said as much. So much so that it could have maybe caused health issues for some of his kids. But he ruined the lives of his family. He doesn't care for his family. He ruined the lives of many other people, including, I wouldn't say completely ruined, but Mr. Kennedy Hall, a very pious and humble man who often, not often, but every day works for his family. And he was lambasted for taking a vacation. And Dan practically banned him from the ranch because he took a vacation to strengthen his family after the death of his son. And Dan is it's of my opinion, he is a narcissist. An evil, evil man and a narcissist who is a money grabber. So if you've had any dealings, if you've been a donor of Pelican Plus, I highly recommend you go out and you take whatever legal actions necessary that have to be taken. Because if you click, again, I will list this website, which is an expose against Dan, and all of this information is verifiable, but I recommend you go read the website, listen to the audio recordings, and tell your story on that website, because it needs to be told. So I don't want to do this because, I liked his daughter and, now she's married. No, of course not. But for the sake of justice, I want to tell my story because I was living with their family for quite some time. And it's sad to say I used to think Dan used to be a friend of mine. It's sad to say that I thought that Dan was someone who I could have trusted. And I'm thankful where I'm at now. I have a great career, and I'm, God willing, going to build a future family. And that's my goal, is to just, find a wife, build my future, and glorify God. And be as integral and as honest and ethical as possible by following the gospel. So anyway, friends, I thank you for listening to me ramble a little bit. This was somewhat vague. It's not everything that happened, but I'm just going to give you the basic rundown because it must be said. And, I endured a lot of abuse, but I am not the only one who's endured abuse. Many others have endured abuse at his hands, and their stories might be coming soon. So I just want to make this first video because it doesn't seem like anyone else has made a video about this. And if Dan, if you're listening, brother, I want to tell you something. God will not be mocked. You think that you can be the Pope. You think that you can run the Council of Priests. You think that you can basically be a married Pope. Brother, you will die one day just as I will. And our goal in this life is to become a saint. Our goal in this life is to reach the kingdom. Christ is very specific that we may not boast in spiritual pride, that he has chosen us, we have not chosen him. So if this be the thing to break your back, if later events, jail, whatever it might be for you, if this be the thing to break your back and to humble you, praise God, brother, because you are beloved by God. But let's not forget, God will be glorified in either our salvation or our damnation. And Judas, who was the lover of money, was possessed by an evil spirit and betrayed Christ. And you are doing the same thing. You are robbing Peter to pay Paul. And shame on you for everyone that you have abused, for the abuse of your family, and for the abuse of everyone else who you've called names and who you've hurt. There is no wonder so many people in your life have not only left the ranch, but have told a different story of what has happened there. And I don't even want the money you owe me. I don't want anything other than for your soul to be saved. But that's up to Christ. And it is your duty to now make amends, or by the law and by God's law, to pay the price. So that's all I got to say to you, Dan. Either way, brethren, I appreciate you listening. Please pray for me and pray for everyone involved in this very sad scenario. Like I said, Pelican Plus is probably going to go under. Sanctus Ranch is gone under. It's a done deal. God will not be mocked. Thank you, friends.